Hey everybody, welcome back to class 3 of mdo204. In this class we're going to look at setting up our different render layers and outputs in Modo, and then we're going to bring those into Nuke and reassemble everything, and we're going to take the image to Final. But before we do that, I wanted to show you one more thing inside of Modo pertaining to the atmosphere, and it's just another way to set it up, which I think actually works really well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into Modo and show you another way to create the atmosphere halo around the Earth. Alright, here we are, and I have just a blank scene, and I'm going to show you what I'm doing before we apply it to the actual scene. So I'm going to bring in a sphere, and I'm going to frame up on this a little bit nicer, and I'm looking through my camera. So what I'm going to do is just double click to select all of the polygons, and I'm going to create a new material for this just to show you. So when I come over to render here, and actually with my mouse highlighted over here, if we hit 0, it'll bring that full screen. That's 0 on the number pad. So I can make that full screen if I want to get rid of the schematic. If I ever want to bring that back, I just hit 0 again. So under this material, I'm going to add a gradient. And under color, I'm going to middle mouse click, pull that over to the edge, and just click on this color template here. Make that red. And on this side, I'm going to make this one blue. So basically what's happening now is it's going from blue to red based on the incidence angle. But one of the cool things that we can do is I can come over and set this to sample parameters, distance to locator. Now you see what happens is everything is basically one solid color. So I'm going to hit 0 and hit A with my mouse over here to frame up this shot, and you can see I'm in a top view. I'm going to turn off this sphere for the time being so I can make sure that I can click my gradient here. Or another thing I could do is change this to wireframe mode, which is going to be easier to see what we have selected. But with my gradient, I'm going to move my gradient to the back corner here or to the front. And you can see now what's happening, come into perspective. It's changing the fall off of this gradient based off of the position of this gradient texture locator right here. So what I'm basically doing is just selecting this green circle right here that we see, and this is only pulling it on the X and Z, so I can spin that around. Now the cool thing with this, so I'm just going to position this. I'm actually going to jump to my right hand view and pull this to this side right here. Come back to camera so we can see it starts here and it's fading off to red right here. Now here's the cool thing about this. I'm actually going to add another gradient, and I'm going to set this gradient to be transparent amount. And it's the same thing that we did before under value. I'm going to bring the middle down so it's completely transparent. So basically what's happening now is we have this fall off. And I'm going to come over to my material and just turn down my specular because I don't need that. And what this fall off is going to allow us to do is create the fall off that you would see as we go from daylight to nighttime. So I'm going to come back to this diffuse color gradient here. And I'm going to edit the gradient. And I can just hit A to frame that up. So I'm going to set another one in the middle here, and with this keyframe selected, I'm going to come over to an orange. It's going to go to red. I'm actually going to pull this over and middle mouse click here and zoom out so we can see this a little bit better. And with this one selected, I'm going to actually pull this down to basically black. So basically we can see as we spin around now, only the front side here is basically blue, and I'm actually going to open this back up and adjust these so we have blue coming in a lot more towards half of the globe here. So it goes from blue to this orange to the red, and I actually want less red, so I'm going to pull that back and bring the bring this black keyframe closer. So basically same thing with our transparent amount gradient that we have here. You can dial this into your liking. Come over to value, frame that up, add some keyframes, get some nice fall off there, add a keyframe here. This is basically the setup, another setup that you could do to give the fall off of the atmosphere as it changes and the light bends and shifts through it. So I'm going to jump into my class 3 project and show you what this looks like with that selected. Alright, so here's the render, and I just wanted to show you how it goes from this soft blue where daylight is happening, and it falls off into pinkish, then red, and if we actually were to go around the backside of this planet, it would actually fall off to black or nothing. And I just wanted to show you how this is nice to kind of get the sense of time zone and the way that the light around the Earth changes. So that's another way of creating an atmosphere, and I actually like this way better for some of the shots that I have going on here. So I think I'm going to stick with this. So let's look at how we can set up our render layers now. So you'll see at the very top of our render tree we have the actual render layer right here, which we can select, and we can dial in different settings. Global illumination, which I have turned off because we only have one light source, and that's the sun. And under frame, for these faster renders, I've set the frame width and height to an arbitrary number here, kind of ultra widescreen, 72 dots per inch. But I think for final render, what I'm going to do is 2048 by 858, which is 2K scope. And from here, you can see that I have final color output and alpha. Now we can look at these actually by coming over here and selecting alpha output. And since this is at the top of the render tree, it's not going to actually take into effect the environment, but it will give us an alpha for everything else that we have in our scene. Likewise, final color will be final color of our entire scene. So those of you who have used Modo before know that the shader tree works from bottom up, and we very well could put some of our render outputs into these materials and get them here. But I'm going to show you another way that I like to set up my render layers. If you don't know how to add them, basically you come to Add Layer, Render Outputs, and all of your render outputs are going to be over here. For instance, we could come to Geometry, Shading Normal, and that'll add a shading normal. And if we actually come over here and look at this, we can see it's giving us our X, Y, and Z of the normals of this planet. And that's very cool, but maybe we wanted the X, Y, and Z of the shading of the clouds. Well, one way we can do that, I'm going to come back to Final Output. We can do that actually by creating pass groups. So I'm going to come over and I'm just going to click a new pass group, and I'm going to call this Final Render All, and I'm going to click OK. So now we have our Final Render All, and we have a new pass group, and what we can do is we can add passes to this group. So I'm going to click New, and I'm going to call this Top Level and hit OK. And actually I noticed that I had my clouds turned off here, so I'm actually going to turn my clouds on, and I'm going to hit Apply. And now I'm going to click New, and I'm going to call this Clouds. So we have a new pass called clouds that I just created. I'm going to click auto add, and I'm going to turn off earth and atmosphere and click apply. And you can see that we now have just our shading normal for our clouds and the alpha output for our clouds as well. So I'm going to come back to final color, and if I jump back to top level, we can see it saves all of the different layers that I had selected. If I come back to clouds, it turns that off, and now I just have clouds. So I'm going to continue down the list, and I'm going to name this atmosphere. Click OK, and auto add is still on, so I'm going to turn off earth and clouds and just have my atmosphere. Click apply. And if we come over here and look at the alpha, it's just giving us the alpha of our atmosphere now. One other thing I might want to do for this one is come down, click on environment, and uncheck visible to camera. So visible to camera is off, and I'm also going to turn off visible to refraction rays. We could leave this in, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but we want a clean atmosphere by itself. So there we have that. Click apply. Now if I come back to top level, we can see that all of these are on, and we can see that these green indicators will tell us for these passes here, these are turned on. So we have our clouds separate, our atmosphere separate, and actually what we could do is I'm going to make two more, one called earth, and under earth I'm going to turn everything else off, including the environment. Uncheck visible to camera, so it's just the earth. Click apply. And while I'm in this pass here, I'm going to add a few other render layers. And one of the things I want to show you is actually Foundry documentation is great for showing you how to rebuild renders. Under their 801 doc, it gives you tons of information about the different render outputs. At the very bottom of the render outputs page, it tells you the exact render outputs that you need to rebuild your image. For our earth outputs, we're going to add all of these. So we need to add diffuse shading total. We also need to add transparent shading, which technically we don't have any transparency, but I'm going to add it for good measure. I'm also going to add reflection shading, which we actually might want to come to our material and add a little bit of reflection. Or if we were using a reflection map, it might be nice too. We need to add specular shading. We need to add subsurface. And we need to add luminance shading. And you'll notice if I come over to luminance shading, it's just going to give us the luminance for the lights on our earth where it's showing up. And this is really powerful because once we render, we could change the color of the lights. We could easily brighten these up if we wanted. We'd have just this area. We could mask it out and make these lights brighter down here. There's a lot that we can do, and we'll get into that in a second. I'm going to come back to final color. So we see that these are all in our render outputs now. But these are still attached to cloud, which I technically don't have any luminance shading on the cloud or even specular shading really. What I want to do is I'm going to turn these off for this particular layer. So with this layer, with this set of passes selected, I can just uncheck these outputs and hit apply. And we'll see if we come back to earth, those are automatically on now. If I come over to top level, these will be on. If I come over to atmosphere, I can uncheck these again. And I think this is actually good to render now, so let me just double check. Top level has everything. Earth, these are all turned on. Clouds, these are turned off. I'm actually going to add one more before I forget, and I'm just going to call this background. And what I'm going to do with this one is only output my final color for this, and I'm going to turn off earth, clouds, and atmosphere, so it's just going to give us the whole background. So those of you who are familiar with Modo, you know that you can hit F9 to fire off a render. What I'm going to do is come over to render and render passes and select my render pass group here and click OK, and it will do its thing, and we'll come back to this here in a second. Okay, so this render finished up, and we can see that this is our most current. And we can come down and select our different passes. And within our different passes, we can see all of our different color outputs. And we can see that if we come over to clouds, it's also there. And we have all the different things that we need. So this is perfect. So I'm just going to go to top level here. And with this selected, I can click Save Image. And I'm going to create a folder called Renders. And save file type as. We can see all these things down here. I'm going to actually save the top level as a JPEG. And I'm going to call this master ref. And I can come to Earth. And instead of selecting the output now, what I'm going to do is click and hold on Save Image and come to Save Passes as Layered Image. And we can see that we can do this as 32-bit or 16-bit EXR. For file size purposes, I'm just going to go EXR. You could also do a PSD if you're going to edit this inside of Photoshop. So I'm just going to call this Earth Layers version 1. Save. It'll write that out for us. And that's all we need to do, because when we did that, it doesn't matter necessarily what pass we're on or what thing we have selected. When we select this render here and do that, it'll export all of those for us. So that actually concludes the Modo part of this. We need to take those images inside of Nuke now. So I'm going to save this project, come back to top level, and we can see that everything is there. So I'm going to save and close this out and hop into Nuke. Alright, so here we are inside of Nuke. I'm assuming most of you have some experience with Nuke. If you don't, and I go a little bit too quick, just let me know in the forums and I'll slow it down. Likewise, if you want me to go a little bit deeper, feel free. I'm going to try to take the middle ground to appease both sides. So first things first, with my mouse and my node graph, I'm just going to hit R to read in the files. And for right now, I'm just going to read in the master ref. So I can pick this up, hit 1 to view it in my viewer. And we can see that this JPEG comes in and it's very nice. So now I'm going to hit R again and select the rest of these EXRs, hit open. And with these all selected, I can hit L to put them in a nice line. So I can look at my atmosphere layer, and I can come over here and see that there are other layers to this. And what I could do is I'm going to hit tab and type layer and just mouse down, press down and enter to bring in a layer contact sheet. And what this will allow me to do is see all the different layers that are associated with this particular EXR. So I'm going to come over, we have the background stars. I'm going to set that aside for right now. We have our clouds. If I hook this up and look through it, we can see that I have bump for the clouds, my regular cloud layer, and if I look through this, I can see that I also have my alpha channel by hitting A, and I do have a top level EXR, which is the same as the JPEG. In this top level, I do have different layers here, which I could shuffle out and combine with the appropriate alpha. I'll set that aside as well for right now. And the earth layer, which if we look at this, our luminance is there. All the different things that we're going to need to make our final pass. So I'm going to focus on this. I just hit spacebar, which takes everything else away, makes this full screen. And I'm going to hit tab and read in a shuffle node. And I'm going to pull this aside. And it's easy to drop dots. If I hit control, I can pull a dot out. So with this shuffle node selected, I can start to shuffle out all the different passes right here. And if you forget, you can always just go back to the Modo documents and see what we need to do to create our final output, which is diffuse shading total plus transparent plus reflection plus specular plus subsurface plus illuminance plus luminance, and that'll give us our final color output. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to shuffle out each one of these, and I'm just going to build this back up. So here we have our diffuse shading total. Under this shuffle, I'm going to set this to transparent shading, which there is none, but that's okay. We're just keeping this in good standards right now, in case there was. This next shuffle is going to be reflection. Copy and paste that, hook it up, and I'm going to set this one to specular, which we can see there is specular shading here. Copy and paste that, control to place that dot, look through this, set this one to subsurface, copy and paste, and this last one is going to be luminance, and we have that. So basically, I'm going to hit M for merge, and we're going to just do the operations that it told us to do. So this guy, so with this node selected, I can hit Shift X to switch inputs. So it's going to be my diffuse shading total plus my transparent shading. So under this node, I'm going to set this to plus, copy and paste that in, and we can just work our way down the line. Give us a little bit of space to work with. Copy and paste those in. So now we have all of those broken out. And if I select my multi-channel EXR up here and hit 1, and the output of this last one and hit 2, zoom in, you'll see that there's no difference, and we have successfully recreated this. One of the things that's going to make life easier is just to switch these inputs here. That way when we select this node, if we drag down on this merge, you'll see that it's actually merging out our luminance shading. Likewise, if we come to our specular, we can actually fade out our specular amount here. So this will give us a lot of control to composite this after the fact through these different pipes here. So we're most interested in being able to have full control over the earth. We can bring in our background and merge our earth over our background. So if we look at this, now we have the stars. And I'm actually going to move this down a little bit. I'm going to make sure that we have our atmosphere and our clouds. Bring the clouds up here. And we can merge the clouds over the earth like so. Just hook it up. Take our atmosphere. Merge that over like so. And voila. So you can see how this becomes very powerful now, where we can start to add masks, roto shapes. Obviously the clouds aren't going to be nearly as bright on this side. Same with our atmosphere. If we compare this to our reference JPEG, we can see what's happening. Now I didn't render out all the different passes to rebuild this. Just for space and size, we didn't need all the passes, and I can easily just come into this merge, hit O for roto, and grab this input here, which is a mask. So if I look through this, and actually what I'm going to do is in this merge node, I'm going to hit invert on the mask, and then just draw a roto shape like so. Hit enter to close that off. And if I select these, I can hit Z, which is going to smooth out that curve. And then I can control and drag out any of these handles to feather it. And kind of just get the placement and feeling I want. I can hit control and drag the inside to feather that off as well. And I could easily use the same mask up here to do the same thing with my atmosphere. So I'm just going to invert the mask that's coming in. Now if we were rebuilding these like we were the actual Earth itself, we'd have a 1-to-1 with our reference that we rendered. But I rendered the reference just so we could kind of see the placement here. I'm going to drag this up and out a little bit. And we can easily just select these and hit Z again to kind of average smooth them out. So this is working pretty good. Not too shabby. One other thing I have to do before I forget is I'm going to add a dot, and from our actual EXR I'm going to hit K to pipe in our alpha back into our rebuilt image. Because if we look at this now and look at our alpha, it's not solid. So we want to copy back in that alpha. That way when we put it on top of the stars, we have a solid mass there. And if we disable that, you can see the stars are coming through where it wasn't solid. So I think this is looking good. What we can do now as well, we could easily add a grade node, come in and start to push a little bit of red into those clouds. Kind of like the feel of that. Maybe a little bit too much. And this is all able to be edited however you want. So we could even add another grade node here and a roto, hook that up, and we could simply create a shape that kind of conforms to the curvature of the Earth. We could smooth that out and feather it. And now what we could do is in this grade node, we could start to really push it red. So these would be all the clouds kind of deep in sunset here. Let's make this look a little bit smoother and nicer. You can find a nice happy medium of where you'd want that to start happening. I'd say that'd go right on the edge there. And it's just these little subtle things like this that would really help bring it home, make it look really good. So if we were to turn that off and on, actually, let me get that out of the way. It's things like this that it's all the little equations that add a little bit of realism to it. We're doing this all after the fact, so we could easily make our Earth branch up here, and then break this out for our clouds. Do some work on the clouds over here, both masking off and grading and color correcting. And then maybe we put the atmosphere on this side. Organize this a little bit. So yeah, that's looking good. So I also have something for you guys that I created. You'll notice that I actually have Video Copilot's optical flares. If you're familiar with After Effects and have this plugin, you can absolutely use it, or you could download an image. But I went ahead and made one for you inside of Nuke that if we put this on top, you'll see I'm getting a nice sun flare here. And we could simply just pull that back in our merge. So we just have a hint of the sun right off the screen here. And of course, we could add a grade node to this. Start playing with the colors to get it exactly how we want it. I think that's a little bit nicer, a little warmer too. And the other thing we could do is we could add a little bit of color to this if we wanted. So in our stars, let's say we wanted to lift the blacks with just a little bit of blue. Just put a little bit of blue in there. Actually, we could probably do a lot less. Just a hint of blue. And maybe even what we do here is we can mask it off of where we want it. So I'm going to create a nice circle and feather that out. So it's kind of like Photoshop, but with nodes, and we're just kind of trying to push and pull things to our liking. We could use this as a background plate. We could use this as a reference image if we're doing a pitch. Many different things, but you can see here how we can go from this as our earth render, adding all of our different layers on top, to something that's really nice and appealing. And it's really simple to experiment. I'm going to add another grade node here, and this one I'm just going to pull down some of the stars just a little bit. See if we can get the earth to pop a little bit more. And I really don't like that, so we're not going to do that. What I might do is invert it and pull some of the stars down over here so we get more of the flaring happening. And I actually like that, so I'm going to keep that. Now if we look at our tree, this is really a simple comp. There's really nothing to it. We can go way more in depth, but I just want to show you it. You don't have to have 100 render layers and crazy things. You can get really fast and quick results, and start playing with them and kind of move into the idea stage as well after the fact of rendering. So we can set up a simple script and have it all ready for us to pull and tweak in different directions. So I'm going to let you guys experiment. I'm going to leave this off here. I'll give you this file if you want to pick up this one or experiment with your own renders. That would be cool. I'd love to see what you guys do. Next week, we're going to jump into some other fun stuff, but I hope you've had fun and learned a little bit through the Earth rig that we did. So I think I'm going to stop here. I think this is cool, and you guys can push and pull it to your liking from here. I'll give you this file. Next week, we're going to hop into some other cool things that you can do inside of Modo. Hope you guys enjoyed the Earth rig part of this course. If you have any questions, please ask them in the forums. I'd love to see your final renders, so please upload those for everyone to see. And I'll see you guys next week. All right, take care.